Hello class, we're going to start chapter 10 today on Monday, April the 6th. And chapter 10 deals with forensics and incident response. What we're going to talk about in this chapter is, it won't click, there we go, enterprise services and related applications. So I thought the picture of the enterprise was appropriate, but this is dealing more with, of course, technology type enterprises. So we're going to look at basically the overall picture of the organization and how all their technology services play together and how we can secure those things on that network. There are 5 categories that can provide data for an incident: network infrastructure services, enterprise management applications, antivirus software, web servers, and data servers. Those are all the places that you could collect data for your incident. In category 1, network and infrastructure services, you can collect data from DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. It assigns IP addresses to specific computers or systems, right? And so the DHCP will create a log, and it'll say this MAC address or this machine name had this IP address from this date to this date, because DHCP, it'll have a lease agreement. And let's say you set the lease agreement to 3 days. Well, in 3 days, the machine has to request a new IP address. So there will be a log of what machines had what IP address during what period of time. And that can be very useful, as you could guess, when you're investigating and you're trying to figure out what machine did what when, especially if all you know is the IP address, that you could look it up and get the MAC address. And vice versa. If you know the MAC address, you could look it up and get the IP address. So it's very useful data that you can get with DHCP logs. All right, so to be specific, Microsoft DHCP, when you set up DHCP in the Microsoft server, it automatically sets up the logs. So it does automatically begin to log the information. The logs are in plain text. They're stored in System32 DHCP. So wherever your System32 is, usually it's on the C partition, but people, if they set it up themselves, it doesn't necessarily have to be on C. So that would depend on how you set it up. You have to realize too, the default only keeps 1 week worth of data. So if you want it to keep more than that, you're going to have to go in and make that change. Some of the fields that are included are listed here. We got the event ID code, that should have a T there. The date the event was logged, the time the event was logged, description. Of course, those date and times are in local time, so it's not, you need to be aware of that. It's not like Eastern time, it's wherever you're living. The description of the event, the IP address, the host name, and there's a line that you can't see below here that the MAC address is also part of that. Then in 2000, those logs started out in 2003. So then in 2008, they added some more information like username, a transaction ID, so that they could keep up with the transactions that the DHCP server made. A queue result, probation time, and you can look all these things, a DHC ID. You can look these things up at what they do in your textbook, or even online. You could Google it. And then it's not something I will require you to know, just if you're curious and want to know more about it. And then Microsoft Server 2012 added some more information to those DHCP logs, so it can help you with knowing even more information about those hosts and how they're connecting to your system. All right, there is an ISC DHCP server. You can download the server software and then install it on a server hardware if you have some hardware. And it's free and open source. and it can run on all kinds of operating systems, Linux, BSD, OS X, and Windows. So it can run on all those different operating systems. It logs to the syslog local 7 facility by default, but you can change that if you want to. And normally it'll have 2 log entries for every client request. So you have this machine, the machine says, hey, I need an IP address, then it'll log that information. It'll say, okay, this machine got this IP address. It'll put it in the DHCP discover log and in the DHCP offer log. So it puts it in both those logs for the IS DHCP software, okay? All right, and then Microsoft DNS also has a log, and remember this is dynamic name service. So Microsoft, you can set that up, but it is not turned on by default. So if you want to log DNS, you can turn it on if you are in charge, you have administrative control of the Microsoft DNS servers. You can log the queries or anything else that DNS handles. It'll log those, and then as an investigator you'll be able to go and look through those logs and look for any information that might help your case or your investigation. Now the thing about Microsoft DNS logs, it creates a very large volume of data if you log details. So just be aware you have to have enough space to hold all that data, because it, especially if you have very many people going online, it's a DNS server, so if you have a lot of people going through that server to get online, you're going to have a whole lot of data. So just realize if you log details, you need to have enough room to store all that data. And then network level DNS logging is also available. It's set up on your network. There's a tool called DNS Cap that can do that for you, and it is designed to monitor your network and the DNS traffic that goes through it. And of course it monitors things like queries and responses, or both, depending on how you set it up. You get to set it up how you want. And of course you want to think ahead when you start setting up these logs. What are possible things that I might want to investigate in the future, so that when your incident occurs, you have the ability to go and investigate. You have those logs to go look at, because if they're not up and running and logging before the incident, you're not going to have the information. All right, so that's the end of part 1 for chapter 10 on the enterprise logs that you can use. And I'll be getting part 2 to you before too long. All right, I hope things are going well with everybody. I'll be talking to you soon.